From Jeremy Renner's forgettable role as the Hawkeye, to Marvel's Malekith being the weakest villain of all time, here are the MCU's worst casting decisions. If you've been a follower of the Marvel Cinematic Universe for some time now, you'll know that they normally do a good job of choosing the best cast to bring the characters to life. But that hasn't always been true. There have been quite a few misses, and while no one can escape human error, some of these decisions are hard to ignore. Just look at Jeremy Renner's character, Hawkeye. Let me preface by saying, yes, he did an okay job in the role. He did give his character more depth, despite initially making a cameo appearance. But were we able to see Hawkeye from the comic books? Where did all his wit go, his cockiness, his attitude? It seems to me that Renner's Hawkeye was a new character entirely, with no memorable banter with Captain America, cool archery fighting sequences, or any of the romance with Mockingbird. Jeremy Renner couldn't bring the charisma to the role that his comic book counterpart has. He had the chance to play the character with an important backstory, and a role in history that couldn't be ignored. But he's still one of the least memorable characters from the MCU film. Maybe if they had incorporated some of Matt Fraction's and David Aya's Hawkeye personality, or handed him some cool power or tech besides arrows, Renner could have turned it around. Then we've got Halle Berry, an actress with a very devoted fan base. Naturally, she was gonna hear a lot of opinions regarding her acting performance as Ororo Monroe, aka Storm. Her scenes were mediocre at best. The terrible catchphrases and the accent that kept changing left us all shocked to the core. It doesn't feel like a lot of effort went into shaping this character. It's hard to see why they made these blunders, when they could have stuck with the comic books and made some wonderful scripts. Speaking of Storm lacking all sense of a strong personality, another Storm that left many fans upset at the casting was Susan Storm, played by Jessica Alba. Alba has claimed in multiple interviews since the release of the second Fantastic Four film that the film made her want to quit acting altogether. And it's noticeable on screen. You can tell her heart simply isn't into it. The character was supposed to be portrayed as a sophisticated and intelligent scientist, but instead, all she got was a role with the entire focus on her beauty. They didn't bother paying attention to character building. The over-sexualized scientist did nothing for the movie or for poor Jessica Alba. I guess one's acting record is bound to have a few downers. But no one would expect it to be after 20 plus years into one's acting career, and that too from an MCU movie. Alba isn't the only otherwise successful actress with an MCU-related downfall. Natalie Portman was also wronged by the MCU. She had one of the more prominent roles in the Thor films, but even all that extra screen time didn't help her case. Shockingly, Jane Foster came off as a pathetic character. Her acting as an astrophysicist simply wasn't convincing. The second movie was even worse, where she didn't look like she had any interest in the project. Not to mention how the character lacked anything of value. Jane wasn't aware what was happening around her most of the time. It might just be the only failure in her record. And the MCU's casting director is every bit to blame. A franchise that had it even worse was Doctor Strange, with their most obvious mistakes being Tilda Swinton and Rachel McAdams. Swinton, who played the Ancient One, was technically supposed to be Tibetan. You can imagine the outrage of the whitewashing of the role. If the intention was to avoid any backlash from the Chinese film market, I'm sure Marvel Studios could have come up with a solution. What problems could they have possibly faced had it been someone Chinese? It feels like a very cheap, disrespectful, and easy way out. It only brought unwanted attention to aspects of Doctor Strange's origins that make no sense whatsoever. Christine Palmer, played by McAdams, was nothing more than a prop. Her entire personality revolves around Doctor Strange. Not for a single moment is there evidence that she has a life or an original thought outside of Strange. After he gets hurt by something supernatural, he demands Palmer drop everything and perform the emergency surgery with no one in the room, which she does. Mind you, she's the head of ER at this point. Not just that, after he gets into a car accident, she also finds the time to personally nurse him and feed him soup. What kind of twisted nurse fantasy is this? Is the MCU not caught up with the times yet? Kat Dennings in Thor is another classic example of a dull sidekick. With nothing more to her role than a one-liner, he's hot. It's almost offensive to cast her as Darcy after all the incredible work she's done on screen. Just like Awkwafina in Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings, she too was put into the film to write off their actual comedic personas, and add a bit of comedic relief to the film without giving them any material to work with. I'm sure these actresses feel like they have much more to offer. No one likes to be pigeonholed into project after project. They weren't the only ones to be typecast. Liv Tyler was chosen to be Betty Ross. a slightly varied version of the same character she's always forced to play. A fragile woman who's close to tears. With all the money that goes into making these films, it's only right to assume they would have some element of originality. At least give these actors something challenging to spice things up. It was a poor decision to ask Tyler to do what she's done in every movie for the past 20 years. The MCU fell short in terms of its usual excellence. Edward Norton as the Incredible Hulk wasn't any better. Notorious for being impossible to work with, he made the collaboration with Marvel Studios a living hell. He was paid to contribute to the writing of the script as well, but the finished version didn't incorporate his recommendations, which allegedly led to another one of Norton's outbursts. Word has it he insisted the Hulk be a serious tough guy, when Marvel wanted to make him more playful and lovable. If the recasting has proven anything, it was a smart choice. Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk upped the game, and it'd be hard to envision the Hulk as anyone else. Another actor who simply wasn't the right fit for the role was Michael B. Jordan as Eric Killmonger. Don't get me wrong, the writing of the story in this case was great. I have to say, Killmonger was one of the most compelling villains in the universe. But Jordan's performance wasn't up to par. After his incredible performances in the Fruitvale Station and Creed, fans were let down by his weak portrayal of the villain. He could have done wonders with this film, especially after all the hype. It's funny to think he wanted his work to be on par with that of Heath Ledger's Joker. Cast members with smaller roles easily overshadow him, like W'Kabi, played by Daniel Kaluuya. Fans also think there's something off about Brie Larson's performance as Captain Marvel. Being arguably the toughest character of them all, Larson's portrayal came off as bland and unsurprising. Her robotic demeanor and lack of style made the character seem wooden. How can we relate to a character like that? Heroes aren't meant to be repulsive. One disaster after another. Inhumans was a total flop. No thanks to Serinda Swan being cast as Medusa. After looking at the ridiculous special effects, unbelievably horrible costuming, and terrible direction, it's hard to judge Swan's acting through all the chaos. Yep, it's easy to see even the most experienced cast members on set was ill-suited for the role, no one more so than Swan. If you look past the ugly wig and the hilarious scenes that weren't meant to be hilarious, Swan didn't help the already doomed project. However, Christopher Eccleston as Malekith has to be the worst casting choice in the MCU world to date. The way he annihilated the character makes Michael B. Jordan's work look golden. He's publicly spoken about his hatred of working with Marvel Studios on many occasions. But whatever his personal issues may have been, why did he have to ruin a great career like that? I know Doctor Who fans won't admit it, but I'll go as far as saying he's not a good actor to begin with. Just watch this film without cringing, I dare you. So from Marvel's Malekith being the weakest villain of all time, to Jeremy Renner's most forgettable role as the Hawkeye, these were the MCU's worst casting decisions.